All right, the Dogs had their first scrimmage of the spring over the weekend. Dean Leggy, Ryan Curley. We'll get to the what happened to me in a little bit. Everybody will be fine. Ryan, your reaction to Kirby's take on the scrimmage over the weekend? He was pretty. I don't want to put words into his mouth, but he's relatively defensive about the defensive line. I don't know if that's where you want to start or not.
Yeah, and I don't think that has anything to do with the scrimmage.
Right, and that's
So that's why he might have just said it while he was being asked about the scrimmage. I thought he was calm for what he said, which was that he thought it was probably the worst. I'm paraphrasing, but he thought it was probably the worst first scrimmage that they had had in the last few years. It's pretty much what he was saying. So I thought he was relatively calm for that. I remember over the last couple of years, he's usually kind of ticked off after the first scrimmage, and I just didn't think that he was acting the same way this time around. Understands that there are a lot of changes. Right? They don't usually have 30 new players ish. It's a little bit more than usual. A couple new coaches. He said there's still a lot of gelling to be done, and that communication was kind of the biggest thing that they struggled with. Subs, getting the
yeah.
little stuff that you work on in the spring, right? So nothing super surprising there as far as the effort and everything. He thought that was there, and that's the important part.
See, that's the thing. I'll just read what he said. He said we had really good energy level, intensity, and intent to go prepare to scrimmage. It was not lethargic ho hum. The players had good intentions and energy. Sometimes it's different start time for scrimmage than our typical practice times of 2 or 3:30. I was worried about us starting fast and having good energy. We had that. We had a lot. We've got a lot to work on. He says that. He says that literally every. I wouldn't say literally. He says that 75% of times he talks about anything. We got a lot of work to do. He said we were really sloppy in terms of substitutions, getting guys on and off the field, communication signals, just a lot of new people in the organization, whether people are new, yada yada yada. He said so from scrimmage 1 to scrimmage 2, starting today, talking about Tuesday, we're moving toward we're moving towards how much can we improve from scrimmage 1 to scrimmage 2. Usually you see immense improvement in guys that just got here because they aren't nervous. It was their first practice at the stadium, so I'm hoping to see some of that growth this weekend to Saturday. Um, my suspicion is that um, they will have 6 scrimmages, 5 at least, before they play. This one, next one, G Day, and then they'll have at least 2 in the fall. Do they have 3 in the fall? I'm getting more and
I
more
think it's only
confused.
two.
They certainly have 2, yeah. So you got 5 scrimmages beforehand, and scrimmages usually I have to say are a mess. There's guys making mistakes because it's not the usual players playing. He talked about that today too, about how talking about Arian Smith, did he get open because it was a bust, or is Dominic Lovett dominating because of Techie Smith and Javon Bullard not being out there. All that stuff was stuff that he touched on, Ryan. But you think he was pretty chilled out about it. He's wanting more from the run game, that's for sure.
Yeah, right. He said that there was a lot of yards that was left out there on the field, is the way that he put it. That they didn't have a single explosive run. I guess the rumor over the last few days has been that Roger Robinson had a pretty big day. I think that's what everyone was
Kirby
chirping about.
loves to completely shit on whatever else is out there, and then he'll lecture everybody about how he doesn't read anything. Although he's not done that lately.
Well, no, he did that multiple times today.
Oh,
So
did he? Okay.
yeah, that was more than
Well, it
one
can't be
time
both. I mean, it
today.
can't.
Yeah. So he
It
he
can't be you don't read it and then you're reacting to it. But go ahead.
I guess he hears about it, or he's picked up on what's going on. I thought that was interesting just because he has talked about how the defensive line is not as good, right? I think here's the problem with that. All of us are comparing it to what it was in
Correct.
2021,
But
and now, and because of the verbiage that they use over and over again, there's a standard of Georgia. There's a standard. Well, the standard is that. And they kind of did that to themselves. And unless you have that many, really, 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 like just ultra talented, like first round picks, they had 4 of them on the defensive line at one time.
yeah,
That doesn't happen, right? What was the other closest, a couple of the Alabama teams in the 2010s? Clemson had three
Clemson
first rounders
18
on
or
the line.
16 was really good.
So that doesn't happen, right? These guys are really good. And he said he wouldn't trade them
Right.
for anybody else. They're just not Jalen Carter or Jordan Davis, right?
And
And
I
that's
don't think
what
you
I think is the biggest problem there.
I don't think you have to be necessarily if your linebackers are doing what they're supposed to do too. Everything it's hand in glove. and you don't have one of your starting linebackers in there, and well, you're rolling over your starting linebackers in a way with Smile not being there and Pop being gone. I don't. I would never take too much from a scrimmage, no matter what. Having done this for as long as I have, there's too many instances, particularly in the spring, of guys who are not playing and therefore someone else is playing, and you get matchups that just don't make any sense at all. You wouldn't see them in the real world, like Dominic Lovett against, the second string guy who's filling in for X, or they're rolling in DBs and all this stuff. You just can't. I would very seriously hedge if I'm out there reading stuff or listening to stuff or the person telling Kirby stuff. I mean, I would totally hedge against every single thing. I want to say this too. I'm sure we'll do a video on the defensive line. They're not dominant like the 2001 team was, but the 2021. I make that mistake constantly. They're not dominant like the 21 team was, but neither was the 22 team, and the 22 team went undefeated and won a national championship. And when you look back to this past season, who really lit them up offensively?
Nobody.
I mean, the team that scored the most points on them this past season, if I'm not mistaken, was Alabama at 27. I mean, that's not Joe Burrow lighting you up.
Tech had a couple touchdowns.
Who's that?
Tech had a couple touchdowns. They had one better offense.
And so did Auburn, and neither of them. I'm trying to think. I mean, I don't at all think that they have a gaping hole anywhere in their program. So UAB scored 21, Mizzou scored 21, Tech scored 23. The second most points allowed. They did not allow over 30 points this past season, and the second most that they allowed was 23. I don't want to go and count on air here, but it's probably 7 of their 13 games they didn't allow 20 points. I mean, you're going to win when you're averaging 40 points a game, Ryan. I mean, so I don't know if I don't know if like the defensive line is hearing about it and that's trickled up to Kirby, or if Kirby's hearing about it too much and he feels like he's got to address it. I don't know. But I don't really. I mean, if it doesn't matter what we say or write, then it doesn't matter.
No, well, I mean that's how he feels about it. I think it's a talented group. Like you said, look, they let up 15 points per game ish. Right, it was a little over 15, which was a top 10 scoring defense. Yes. I believe it was top 5 actually. So do that again, which I think they're capable of doing. The defense, I wonder more about it than I wonder about the offense. And I think that those headlines are starting to trickle that this is going to be a really, really good Georgia offense. What's the defense? They're going to replace a lot of secondary guys. I think replacing 3 starters in the secondary when you start 5 guys there, that's a lot to me. But the front 7 is going to be pretty much the same.
Yeah.
I mean, they really the only changes are Jamon Jamis Johnson and Zion Logue and Marvin Jones Jr. Those guys are probably the ones.
And Marvin Jones Jr. was a reserve. I mean, he wasn't starting. So
yeah. So
I think losing Zion's not great. He was a very dependable player for them.
But they're just going to plug another big body up in there.
Yeah, sure. You get Brinson and Stackhouse back, Ingram Dawkins. Williams, they've got players, man. Now, they're more loaded at linebacker than anywhere. I mean, they just are. So, does that make up for it?
Well, what you just said about all those guys you just named, this is year 5 for Warren Brinson and Nazir Stackhouse in the program. So, I mean, those guys have been around a long time.
This is year 5, yes.
That was something that was discussed, too, today. Just, how much – he was actually talking about the offensive line when he was talking about this, weighing experience versus actually being good. You can regress, but snaps do matter, and those guys have a ton of snaps. They're going to be playing interior offensive linemen in the SEC. They just haven't played as much football as they have.
Yeah.
So, and they've showed times in the past where they can be really impactful, right? These are not guys that, if I'm playing that side of it, hey, Georgia fans, don't worry, there's still talent there. Nazir Stackhouse was very important against Missouri. And then Missouri 2022, Warren Brinson was very good when Jalen Carter went down. There were multiple TFLs that, they wouldn't have the momentum without plays like that. So these guys can make an impact. It's just about the consistency. People want to see dominance. People want to see a bunch of zeros. right, throughout the season. I don't. Did they shut anyone out last year? Did they? Is that something that people freaked out about?
They did not have a shutout last season, and I'll go real quick back to 21 before we end. Um, if they had not had that defense in 21, it might not have bought them enough time. Now I don't know. They may still have been okay. It might not have bought them enough time to get comfortable with Stetson. Um, I don't
It
know.
mattered. Yeah, that
Maybe.
mattered.
Yeah, but this offense. I mean, he even talked about it with Chris Lowe. Let me just say this real quick. Let me get to it. Oh gosh, now I've lost it.
Actually, might have it pulled
No,
up.
he says I don't know. This is about the defensive line here, and maybe this is why he is talking about. He said either we're maybe a little bit weaker on the defensive line, or we're really good on the offensive line. The glaring thing I've seen in practices is that the offensive line has done a really good job. That's not to say we're subpar on the defensive line last year. We just weren't great. We didn't have a dominant guy. I mean, this whatever. I mean, anyway. But we're always going to be good on defense. I don't know how. I don't know that we're going to be great this year, but I think we have a chance to be great on offense, which I think is exactly correct. I think they could be quite good on offense. But he knows, like everybody else, you really want to be good at both because you never know what game you're going to need somebody. And in that Missouri game in 22, which seems to be like seared in your brain, which I understand. I mean, that was a really important game in moment. They needed both. I mean, they needed the defense to stop them right when they did, and they needed the offense to come alive in the second half when it did. Anyway.
Yeah. Well, the offense has been great for a few years now. I
Yeah.
feel like I don't know why. I feel like it's been ignored just because of that 2021 defense, but Georgia's offense was better than its defense in 2022. And it was last year as well. It just off the eye test, right? I'm sure the numbers would kind of tell you that too, but I thought that Georgia's offense was more important than their defense the last two seasons.
All right. Well, there's our scrimmage rundown talking about every year but this past
Yes.
year. Anyway, thanks for watching.